Hey, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today I want to show you one of my favorite things to do with all of my excess scraps that I have laying around my wood shop. If you are anything like me, you have bins and bins and bins of cutoffs and things like this that you don't feel like you want to throw away because who knows, maybe you'll use them someday. And today is the day that we are going to use them. So I like to cut my strips somewhere between an 1/8 inch and a 1/4 inch. Kind of depends, but just do whatever you feel is the safest. And this right here is definitely not the safest way to go about this, but this is how I did it at the time. I'm going to cut to a clip now of what I do. This is the micro jig gripper, and this is way safer when you are cutting thin strips like this. You can see here it has a gravity hook, I think is what it's called, or a gravity block that helps feed the piece through and also keeps your hands completely away from the blade. And I will link that down below. So now that I have all of my strips cut, I'm going to lay them out so that way I keep them all bundled together. Then I'm going to grab my backer here and I'm going to measure center from side to side and from top to bottom so that way I can make sure that my pieces line up perfectly. All of my cuts are going to be made at a 45-degree angle and I'm cutting them all on my miter saw. What I'm going to do is take this scrap piece of wood that I have here, set that up and lock it in place so that way I can make a bunch of repeated cuts. I'm doing that 2 or 3 pieces here at a time so that way it's a lot faster. Then I'm going to make a little triangle, so I'm going to cut 2 of these pieces like so and then tape them to another piece here. Sneak up on that cut so I get that perfect triangle. Just be careful again, if you have a table saw and a crosscut sled, probably be a little bit easier and safer to do it there. Now that I have all of my pieces cut, I'm going to start laying out the design that I want. Whenever I'm laying out a design, I kind of just wing it. I never know exactly how I'm going to do it. I just lay it out to make sure I cover my backer board, and then I start staining and painting my pieces. And sometimes I will make adjustments on the fly if I don't like the way the design looks. Just have fun with it. Then I'm going to use my orbital sander, flip it upside down, and lock it on my workbench because I don't have a benchtop sander. And then just sand away the edges because I feel like it gives that kind of cool dimension to the design. Then I'm gluing it and locking it in place with 18 gauge brad nails and wood glue. I did switch to a 23 gauge pin nailer because the holes are a lot smaller and you can barely see them when you're using it. Now to trim away all of the excess, I do use a track saw now and that is amazing. So if you are getting into this, I know that's kind of an expensive purchase, but definitely worth it. So my process before I had my track saw was this. I used a nice flat piece of plywood for my router to ride on, and I used my flush trim bit on my router to get one side completely straight. Then I sent it over to my table saw and cut away the opposing side there, and then once I had that side completely cut, I just moved it in a little bit and took down the side that I had used the flush trim bit on just to make sure that it was nice and smooth. The final thing we're going to want to do is put a border around it so you can't see the exposed plywood and the exposed edges of the pieces. I'm ripping my piece here to about a 1/2 inch, cutting it to the length, then gluing brad nailing and doing the same for the sides, cutting to length, glue, and more brad nails. And then you are all finished. You were able to take a bunch of scraps that you had laying around in your shop that were just collecting dust and taking up space and make a pretty cool piece of art with it. Hope this was helpful. I hope this inspires you to make something cool with all the stuff that you have laying around your shop, and we'll see you on the next video.